Hello, and welcome to another episode of Creating Cultures That Outperform, this incredible series called Jerks at Work. I can't believe we're up to episode 13, the Information Hoarder. I've worked with a number of these people, and they can be just so annoying. If you've been really following the series with us, you could see how rich and deep this is. Next week, we're going to be covering the perfectionist, and we're moving on to the debater, the critic, check the box leader, corporate sociopath. There's just so many of these personality types that get in the way when you're in companies, and some of them have a mix of these, but most of us have worked with a few of these people over time for sure. And hopefully you can recognize them right away. But let's talk about the information hoarder. The information hoarder is just an individual that, keeps all the knowledge and information themselves to maintain safety and control. They slow everything down. They prevent collective learning. This is their power in the place, and they never want to relinquish it at all. And
Yeah,
there's
that's that
never ways to
person.
spot.
Yeah, that person is really, I love that image on the previous page because it's so true. They are really trying to keep
Yeah.
all the information to themselves. They don't want anybody else to know what they know so that they can be the center of the universe. They really are just kind of putting up all these roadblocks and barriers to you getting the information that you need to be successful.
And they can always be pleasant and polite while not giving you what you need
Mhm.
too, right? Like this
Right.
guy here.
That's right.
And there are a
Yeah.
number of ways to spot them, Tara. Maybe you want to go through a couple of these.
Yeah, this person is really, again, they want to be that single source of truth. They want to be the person, they know they have all the information that others don't know as much as they know. And so they really do want to hold on to that position of authority to be that single source of truth. They only want to share with select people and select information because they're not really trying to be a team player. They're trying to hold that position. And so they're always looking for ways to create obstacles, to give you pieces of information, knowing that that's not all the information that you need. They'll give you just bits and bytes of it so that you're constantly coming back or constantly asking other people for additional information.
They own the
They're
big picture.
really, yeah,
They own the big picture. They're not giving you
they're
that.
not proactive at all. They're really not trying to give you what you need to be successful. They're just trying to give you the next little bit of information.
Yeah, and it's their source of power. It's who they are. It's their
Mhm.
safety and security. It makes them somebody. And so when they make it unnecessarily complex, they're more important to themselves.
Yeah.
They love to have people waiting on them. And you know, they basically end up pausing the work on just so many things until they engage, and they're very happy to do that. Work with somebody at Merrill Lynch many years ago who's one of these people, and you just had to pull teeth. They had all the information, and they were like the guy in the prior picture, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And so, a bunch of ways to handle them. I love how they're taking the information from this guy now, and begin
Yeah.
right. Look at his
And
face.
they have this stack of finally useful information.
Yeah,
It's just hilarious.
it is good. It is pretty funny. And
Yeah.
bosses, look, you got to make knowledge sharing the expectation. If they don't share it, you got to actually rate them very low because they're in the way. And they've got to really start to become part of a team, without a doubt. That's the only way
Yeah.
this is work out.
Yeah. And you absolutely have to ask this person for visibility. You want to know what they know, where are they getting their information from. Ask them to explain things to you and not just give you an answer. So you want to get into the logic behind why they're saying what they're saying. You're really digging for visibility because what you ultimately want to be able to do is figure it out for yourself. You don't want to have this bottleneck of one person knowing everything. And then once you start to learn, capture what you're learning and share it with others. Create those knowledge blogs where people can just go
Right.
and search and ask questions, get some answers back. There are all kinds of tools that you can use to facilitate information sharing, but you've got to really force this person to do it because they don't want to share the information they have. For whatever reason, they feel like it's job security. It's going
Yeah.
to make them be the person that's the go-to person. But ultimately, what they're creating is a bottleneck and it's totally destroying morale and culture. So you have to really address this head on.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And there's a bunch of things you certainly don't want to do. Look at this guy. He's behind the thing saying, hey, just go to him. He's got everything. So they can be
Yeah.
very flippant like that at times. But,
Yeah.
what you don't want to do as a boss is to actually centralize stuff through them.
Right.
Some bosses like, God, this guy's great. He has all the knowledge and everything. And they love him for a time because they start becoming dependent on them until they realize that, wow, they're not the go-to person. They're the bottleneck.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. They're the person that you end up relying on them instead of understanding for yourself. And that really is disastrous when you do that. You don't want to just get the answer. You want to get the understanding so that you can ultimately get to your own answers without having to just rely on that person to do all the thinking for you, to give you all the details. You really do want to start to peel back the layers of understanding so that you can now fish for yourself and not just rely on that one person. And you don't want to start working around them, because then that just creates more bottlenecks, because you're getting pieces of information, but you're not getting exactly what you need. So you really do have to address it.
And they can be the saboteur, not by doing it directly, but
Mhm.
by letting people go off in a wrong direction, knowing they'll eventually be back when they find out what they did was wrong. And
Yeah,
so
they'll
they could
send you
avert
off on a
trouble.
goose chase, a wild goose chase where you're just chasing bits and pieces of information when they have the whole picture and they know exactly how it works. But they'll send you off on a wild goose chase because that delays them having to share that information with you.
Right. And they can easily, if somebody comes along and says, hey, did we get this right? And they send them some information, they can just not respond until you
Yeah,
come begging, right, for
yeah,
their help, because that's what makes them important. And they're the center of the universe, right? So they're hiding behind all their locked cabinets, and they're amazing. These people
yeah.
create a lot of damage. Look, request pending 127. Things back up around
Mhm.
these people. And so if you don't break this knowledge blockade down and spread the information and make sure sharing information is a thing, like Terry says, creating repositories, documenting stuff, building enough documentation so you guys get the big picture, you're going to lose a lot of productivity. You're going to have a lot of frustration and lower morale. And you got a huge single point of failure here. This person is just in the way.
Yeah. And they are creating bottlenecks that don't really help. They actually block growth. People need to learn and understand and be able to figure things out on their own. There's a sense of accomplishment and pride that comes when you can do things on your own. This person is totally destroying that by continuing to just hold the information that keeps people from growing, keeps people from adding to their knowledge. And this image again, AI is just nailing these images because
Oh, yeah.
people just get worn down and they get frustrated.
And he's
And
the
the
king.
guy just holding up the
He's in the
sign,
front.
still waiting, like he
Yeah.
can't even speak anymore. He's so tired. He's just like
Well,
still waiting.
the people in the front are totally unconscious already.
Yeah,
The
they're
king is
just
the guy with all
unconscious
the
while
energy.
this guy just sits there, happy as a clam with all the information. And he
Oh, yeah.
doesn't even realize the stress and the frustration that he's creating on the team, where people are not able to do their jobs, because ultimately people just want to do a great job, but they need all the resources in order to
Oh,
be
yeah.
able to do that. And
They
so
need
this
the
person is
understanding.
really, really hindering team progress.
Yeah. And, waiting is the norm. That's what happens when these
Yeah.
folks are running things. No question about it. Well, we're moving on to another person who can be very much in the way for a different reason. Work with a number of these folks as well. We're going to look at the perfectionist next week.
Yes.
So we're here, a new Jerk at Work every Wednesday, 3 o'clock. We launch, the show, and we've been getting pretty good feedback on these. So I hope you're enjoying it. And Tara, we'll be there next week.
Yes.